The Fourth Tablet from the Seven Tablets of Creation by Leonard William King, 1902. The Fourth Tablet. They prepared for him a lordly chamber. Before his fathers, as prince, he took his place. Thou art chieftest among the great gods, thy fate is unequalled, thy word is Anu. O Marduk, thou art chieftest among the great gods, thy fate is unequalled, thy word is Anu. Henceforth, not without avail, shall be thy command. In thy power shall it be to exalt and to abase. Established shall be the word of thy mouth, irresistible shall be thy command. None among the gods shall transgress thy boundary. Abundance, the desire of the shrines of the gods, shall be established in thy sanctuary, even though they lack offerings. O Marduk, thou art our avenger. We give thee sovereignty over the whole world. Sit thou down in night, be exalted in thy command. Thy weapon shall never lose its power, it shall crush thy foe. O Lord, spare the life of him that putteth his trust in thee. But as for the God who began the rebellion, pour out his life. Then set they in their midst a garment, and unto Marduk their firstborn they spake, May thy fate, O Lord, be supreme among the gods, to destroy and to create. Speak thou the word, and thy command shall be fulfilled. Command now, and let the garment vanish, and speak the word again, and let the garment reappear. Then he spake with his mouth, and the garment vanished. And again he commanded it, and the garment reappeared. When the gods his fathers beheld the fulfillment of his word, they rejoiced, and they did homage unto him, saying, Marduk is king. They bestowed upon him the scepter, and the throne, and the ring. They gave him an invincible weapon, which overwhelmeth the foe. Go, and cut off the life of Tiamat, and let the wind carry her blood into secret places. After the gods his fathers had decreed for the Lord his fate, they caused him to set out on a path of prosperity and success. He made ready the bow, he chose his weapon. He slung a spear upon him and fastened it. Missing text. He raised the club, in his right hand he grasped it. The bow and the quiver he hung at his side. He set the lightning in front of him. With burning flame he filled his body. He made a net to enclose the inward parts of Tiamat. The four winds he stationed, so that nothing of her might escape. The south wind and the north wind and the east wind and the west wind he brought near to the net, the gift of his father Anu. He created the evil wind, and the tempest, and the hurricane, and the fourfold wind, and the sevenfold wind, and the whirlwind, and the wind which had no equal. He sent forth the winds which he had created, the seven of them, to disturb the inward parts of Tiamat. They followed after him. Then the Lord raised the thunderbolt, his mighty weapon. He mounted the chariot, the storm unequalled for terror. He harnessed and yoked unto it 4 horses, destructive, ferocious, overwhelming, and swift of pace. Missing text were their teeth. They were flecked with foam. They were skilled in missing text. They had been trained to trample underfoot. Missing text. Mighty in battle, left and right. Missing text. His garment was missing text. He was clothed with terror. With overpowering brightness his head was crowned. Then he set out, he took his way. And towards the raging Tiamat he set his face. On his lips he held missing text. He grasped in his hand. Then they beheld him, the gods beheld him. The gods his fathers beheld him. The gods beheld him. And the Lord drew nigh, he gazed upon the inward parts of Tiamat. He perceived the muttering of Kingu, her spouse. As Marduk gazed, Kingu was troubled in his gait. His will was destroyed, and his motions ceased. and the gods, his helpers, who marched by his side, beheld their leaders, missing text, and their sight was troubled. But Tiamat, missing text, she turned not her neck, with lips that failed not she uttered rebellious words. Missing text, thy coming as Lord of the gods. From their places have they gathered, in thy place are they. Then the Lord raised the thunderbolt, his mighty weapon, and against Tiamat who was raging, thus he sent the word, Thou art become great, thou hast exalted thyself on high, and thy heart hath prompted thee to call to battle. Missing text, their fathers, missing text, their missing text. Thou hatest, missing text. Thou hast exalted Kingu to be thy spouse. Thou hast, missing text, him that, even as Anu, he should issue decrees. Missing text. Thou hast followed after evil, and against the gods my fathers thou hast contrived thy wicked plan. Let then thy host be equipped, let thy weapons be girded on. Stand, I and thou, let us join battle. When Tiamat heard these words, she was like one possessed. She lost her reason. Tiamat uttered wild, piercing cries. She trembled and shook to her very foundations. She recited an incantation. She pronounced her spell. And the gods of the battle cried out for their weapons. Then advanced Tiamat and Marduk, the counselor of the gods. To the fight they came on, to the battle they drew nigh. The Lord spread out his net and caught her, and the evil wind that was behind him he let loose in her face. As Tiamat opened her mouth to its full extent, he drove in the evil wind, while as yet she had not shut her lips. The terrible winds filled her belly, and her courage was taken from her, and her mouth she opened wide. He seized the spear and burst her belly. He severed her inward parts, he pierced her heart. He overcame her and cut off her life. He cast down her body and stood upon it. When he had slain Tiamat the leader, her might was broken, her host was scattered. And the gods, her helpers, who marched by her side, trembled and were afraid and turned back. They took to flight to save their lives, but they were surrounded so that they could not escape. He took them captive. He broke their weapons. In the net they were caught, and in the snare they sat down. The missing text. Of the world they filled with cries of grief. They received punishment from him. They were held in bondage. And on the 11 creatures which she had filled with the power of striking terror, upon the troop of devils who marched at her, missing text, he brought affliction. Their strength he, missing text. Them in their opposition he trampled under his feet. Moreover, Kingu, who had been exalted over them, he conquered, and with the god Duga he counted him. He took from him the tablets of destiny that were not rightly his. He sealed them with a seal, and in his own breast he laid them. Now after the hero Marduk he had conquered and cast down his enemies, and had made the arrogant foe even like, missing text, and had fully established Anshar's triumph over the enemy, and had attained the purpose of Nudimud. Over the captive gods he strengthened his durance, and unto Tiamat whom he had conquered he returned. And the Lord stood upon Tiamat's hinder parts, and with his merciless club he smashed her skull. He cut through the channels of her blood, and he made the north wind bear it away into secret places. His fathers beheld, and they rejoiced and were glad. Presents and gifts they brought unto him. Then the Lord rested, gazing upon her dead body, while he divided the flesh of the missing text, and devised a cunning plan. He split her up like a flat fish into 2 halves. One half of her he established as a covering for heaven. He fixed a bolt, he stationed a watchman, and bade them not to let her waters come forth. He passed through the heavens, he surveyed the regions thereof, and over against the deep he set the dwellings of Nudimmud. And the Lord measured the structure of the deep, and he founded Eshara, a mansion like unto it. The mansion Eshara, which he created as heaven, he caused Anu, Bel, and Ea in their districts to inhabit. End of the 4th tablet from the 7 tablets of creation by Leonard William King.